Wait for the boy. Welcome to July on Carnival of Randomness. I'm Rob, currently freaking out about having a dentist appointment in a couple days. And there he'll do year long. It's the hardest working man in Western New York, Greg.
Hey, how you doing?
And over on stage left here, we are starting the carnival, the whole summer of the carnival. And I don't want to retcon anything. I want to do Canon. So to stage left or right, I'm confused now too. We have our good friends from DVC. We had to drag Alexis away from her crossword.
Hey, I was okay.
Maybe Mario wanted to introduce him because he had some good names for him.
Well, actually, I do have with me the newly christened Joey Cha-Cha and Alex the Max, also known as Joey Chacon and Alexis Maxim.
All right.
So
we were having a discussion before we went on about stage left and stage right and what the hell it is and where the hell exactly all that is, and it's very interesting, actually. I guess it all depends on your point of view.
I mean, it depends on the actor's point of view. It's supposed to be when you're facing out to the audience.
Right.
But if your director is, say, sitting across from you in a rehearsal space wearing a shirt that has it from their perspective and they say stage right and you follow their shirt, you go the wrong way.
But I often give the wrong direction about where you should go anyway. So don't you automatically default to the opposite of what I've said?
No, because you don't intend to do that usually. And when you're wearing the shirt, it's like a double negative. I don't know what to do.
You dare defy the director.
It's not intentional.
I'm just kidding.
I don't know, are there any theater myths about it, about not coming on one way, bad luck or anything, or not?
Tons.
I mean,
coming on stage, left or right? Is there
no, not really. Just show up when you're supposed to. It's
the same way with a sound check band thing. It's like the sound guy's going, okay, guitar stage left, and everybody's going, oh, am I that guy or is that the other guy?
So getting that out of the way, you have your new masterpiece coming up. It's called Canon, isn't it? I think or not.
We do indeed have a new DVC production.
Yes.
Dream Visualize.
That's why you're here.
This is why we are here, to promote our material, as it were. Actually, I just kind of showed up here to have a random conversation with you that would be recorded and played for the masses. And I brought some people with me because even I get tired of the sound of my own voice after a while.
Say hello to the people, Joey.
Hello.
All right, there you go.
So yes, DVC is putting on a show that opens July 12th. We run actually July 12th through the 14th and then the 18th through the 20th. And it is a brand new show called Canon. And the process by which it came together is one I will not share all the details of with you, but suffice to say, we did not know a couple months ago that we would be doing this show at this time. But circumstances fell out as they did, and we needed to switch to a different production, and it ended up being one that didn't exist yet, that had to be created. And so I sort of laid the groundwork for that creation by writing something, and then pulling in all of my friends, coworkers, and associates from DVC.
The usual crew.
To make this happen. So I'm one half of the directing crew, the half of the Sav Sibs that is with you today, and then two of the actors in the show. And to simply say they're actors in the show is a little bit of a misnomer because they are both instrumental to making things happen in DVC offstage as well. Every time we do any production, particularly when it comes to figuring out how stuff's going to get put together and then actually putting it together. And when they're done handling a variety of those other responsibilities, they get on stage and perform as well.
So is it true that it was a smaller production originally called Shotgun, but expanded, became Canon?
That is, well, yes.
Artillery humor.
I'm just kidding. So what is it exactly about? I mean,
That is a good question. What is it about? So, Canon is about a group of friends who gather together to play tabletop role-playing games. And have created this, are part of this fantasy world. And so the play focuses on this idea of how these people play these characters in the world of Ascapia.
That's cool.
And the effects that one world has on the other world being Earth in 2024. And so the idea was to blend some sort of fantasy comedic elements, and to do what DVC often does, which is show the world through our own perspective, and deliver some message about like doing stuff that like makes the world better instead of worse.
Is that what we do?
That's what I do.
I don't know. This is like a boring year. It's hard to make it like any better than it is.
Right?
But I was actually thinking of role playing. It's in Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World, if nobody's read it, right? Read it, and I'll get the name wrong, but there was a brilliant student named Keith Allen, I think it might have got the name wrong. Brilliant physics grad student, where he came up with he claimed going through using physics, and he did all the formulas. He found some fantasy world filled with trolls, all the D&D stuff. So they brought in a doctor, a psychiatrist, and said, okay, we got to get him out of this. So what happened was the psychiatrist goes, okay, I'll be part of the fantasy, and then I'll slowly drag him out. So the punchline was, and this is true, is that Alan was just brilliant, and he was faking it because he was bored. But the doctor got dragged so much into it, he started believing it.
Nice.
But go read Demon Haunted World. It's awesome. I might have gotten his name wrong, but it's a fascinating story how our mind works like that.
Yeah, that's very cool, actually. There's definitely, not to discuss too much of the intricacies of the plot, but certainly the idea here is, how much is of these two people before us, Joey and Alexis, both play two characters in the show, right? They play their character in their fantasy world, and then they play their character in in the world of Earth as well. And so the idea of how similar those characters are and how different those characters are, and the effect that has on the world around them is a big
Are there
part of the
intersections between the two worlds? And all that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it starts out. The first scene starts out in fantasy world and immediately gets pulled back to the table after a couple minutes. So you see both versions of each of the characters pretty early on.
That sounds really interesting. I may have check this one out.
Yeah.
You definitely
Come on,
should.
Greg, you have to watch.
I know. I think.
It is. I don't know. I think it's pretty amusing, fast moving,
Pretty realistic.
and if you think about it really hard, it makes an amazing amount of sense. And if you think about it too much harder than that, it stops making sense again. But then if you just keep thinking about it, someday it will all make sense.
It's funny you brought this up because I had no idea what we were going to talk about. But I was recently watching a show. I mean, it doesn't matter what show it was. It's a cop show. But the plot was that this actor was going to be doing a movie, and he needed to shadow a detective. Mm-hmm. So he needed to, And it got me thinking about that whole, how interesting it must be for an actor to pretend he's an actor working. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what is involved in that? What kind of headspace? I mean, is it different than acting a different part, or? I mean, or I don't know. What?
Playing a different version of yourself?
I guess, yeah.
In a way, most characters come from facets of yourself that you just don't usually use.
Uh-huh.
Things that you don't get to explore, and that's a lot of what tabletop roleplay games are, too. You can make a character and you can try to make them as different from you as possible, but there are still moments where you can only play so far away from yourself without realizing you're bleeding through.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just found that to be an interesting thing for an actor to do. Like, okay, how do I pretend to be a vacuous jackass actor trying to be, you know what I mean? Like,
you just really tap into your truest self, and it'll come
you are a drummer, Greg, so it should be hard.
I know, I'm overthinking it, but I thought it was interesting.
I mean, go on. No, it's a good question to pose to my actors about this idea of playing two different people in the same show that are kind of the same person. I was looking right at Joe.
Yeah, okay.
I already did my part.
I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the two of them. Like Alexis said, they're like you can jeez, I can't talk. There's a lot of similarities between like you and the character that you play, because like you are the person that you draw from most. you could like look to somebody else as like an influence or something, like say Miles Davis, for example. You could pull from Miles Davis, but at the end of the day, that's still you on stage, and you're still pulling some of yourself in there. You're finding your similarities between Miles and whatnot, say.
Right.
So you only say like 3 or 4 words in the whole thing.
And it might make you feel kind of blue.
Miles Davis can only play a couple of notes here and
And
there.
it's actually a question I'll ask a little bit of thoughts on either purely acting or the method, because there's a famous story I like to tell about Marathon Man, where Dustin Hoffman doesn't sleep for 24 hours, is putting stones in his shoes, and Laurence Olivier's looking at him going, why don't you try acting, dear boy? It's so much easier. Do you do a mix, sort of, like bring whatever works in? Or is it be the ball? Imagine being the ball.
So
You're not.
I'll let actor people talk about that. I've met actors, though.
I like to think of like that style of method acting as like extreme method acting. Living as the character, being that person, not yourself. Whereas like, let's see, I think it's Uta Hagen said like,
Respect for acting.
Yeah, respect for acting. First textbook I ever had for acting. Where was I going with this? Okay. So like, you kind of like just play as, I don't know what I'm doing.
You're perfect for this show.
You mentioned Uta Hagen, so you're okay
Yeah,
so far.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, like
Harder than most get.
you know, the Lee Strasberg, and you got different styles
Yeah.
of acting, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it definitely goes back to what you were just saying, Rob, about like this, you know, if I can sum it up as the British style of acting, and this idea of like, you know, I'm in this character, and I'm being on stage or being recorded, and then we're done, and then I'm immediately out of it, and that's probably a more, I don't know, probably psychologically
Healthier.
healthier
Not
life
always how it works.
to be living in.
I'm sure some jump in and out, and other people get immersed in it. I mean,
Right.
I think
There's
it
a
all depends on
story.
how heavy.
I'll give you another story from reading Lee Marvin's book. He was in the method with Lee Strasberg, and they were talking about he's supposed to play a soldier dying of gangrene.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there, he's doing nothing. And Lee Strasberg goes, you have to show the audience how you feel. And Lee Marvin was a combat vet who was wounded in World War II. The Marines, he was on the shelf for 12 months. And he said, you act like that because in the end stage of gangrene, you feel nothing. You feel euphoria. Then he walked out.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because if you pull too far from a lived experience, at a certain point it's not watchable for anyone else. There's a fine line between playing reality and playing reality to a point where it's interesting. Because most of the things you do in your everyday life are boring as hell. But if you have to play a real person on stage, you have to amplify parts and conflicts and certain emotions in order to make them read and to make people care.
It's a heightened form of reality,
Yeah.
for sure. People need to connect. But going back to Greg talking about that cop show, I mean, you can go back and look at that. Obviously, you know, in the most realistic of shows of that nature, like, you know, police have to pull their guns out every episode because you got to make some kind of exciting event happen. And as it turns out, that's not really an everyday occurrence. You know, shows about teachers. Let me tell you something about shows about teachers.
It's the joke about Star Trek. What about all the boringness between the adventures and everything?
Well, like there's an interesting scene in there where the cop is chasing this guy, and he tells the actor to stay in the car. You know, don't get involved.
Right.
So as the guy's running by, it's kind of a cool scene. He opens the door and knocks the guy over from the car, and then the cop starts hollering at him. Well, he goes, "But I, that was cool. That's what. No, that's not. You know." And so it's the whole conflict between what you should do, and I told you to stay in the car. And
I mean, he did stay in the car, didn't he?
yeah, but he used his head, but that would be movie-like to do something like that.
But I also thought about,
You
I was
know.
thinking of Ray Fiennes in Schindler's List, and his character was such a vile person. It led to a divorce because it got to him. Alexis Kingston said it got so much in his head. I used to talk to MG about playing Sylvia Plath about all this time and about how this affects you.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Oh, boy.
It is indeed a thing.
And I
To
will
quote a
say,
line from the play.
you got me at one of your plays, because I remember one of the characters had dementia. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I just dealt with this with my dad, and I got a little, so thanks a lot for that.
Well, that's definitely an aspect of theater in general. and DVC.
But I think people want to relate, though. That's the best thing. You watch it, wait a second, I know this person, I can relate to the situation, I've been like this. That's part of the whole thing about bringing people in.
Right. And where you are in the process of dealing with that sort of thing, if you see a show and, it's someone in the show a character in the show is dealing with cancer and you've had cancer as being this part of your life, this can be very relatable and potentially healing, insightful, but it can also be painful depending on where you are in the process. I mean, the audience comes into the show and their reactions to the show create that.
Now, we aren't going to be able to tell between the one like fantasy and reality, unlike that Blackout show. they goofed me up right at the show.
Well, black comedy?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, but I'm like, what is going on?
Okay, Rob, it was like, when it's dark on stage, the lights are on. When it's light on stage, the lights are off.
It's a little above my head. I do a podcast, man.
It's like a stage right, stage left.
Oh, man.
Okay, now I'm just... if you ever redo it, I'll try to remember.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of like that noises off play, which I thought was a really cool idea. Like the whole story happens behind the curtain.
Yes,
and it's interesting.
And you don't know that you're going to be getting that necessarily until well into the show. So you're watching everything that's happening in front, and then seeing the same thing from a different perspective. I guess.
Yeah, I thought that was very.
Remember, we had our classic filmed carnivals where we did the D&D. I was just wearing my witch's hat, but it's too hot, and I'm going for a walk afterwards. It's Pittsburgh. Maybe not. But so I really like the idea, though, like you're trying to become like Patrick, maybe Daenerys Targaryen, basically, for obvious reasons. But I like that idea of jumping into another character, too. It's like something, you do bring another aspect of your personality to it, though.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the appeal of role-play games and of theater in general. It's all playing. You get to have a lot of fun. And I mean, it's not always fun. It's also a lot of work. It's a lot of character sheets and math, and you have to remember how to add. And 4 plus 12, man, as many times as you think you can add that, you can't.
And I've also found it's an escape to or a getaway where, especially, like, I use this more with drag queens. A lot of the drag queens I know, they're super shy. I would call them like they're playing a superhero. Because they get in the drag queen, they're all flamboyant and all, but if you talk to them out of the thing, they're very shy. And I think a lot of actors are the same way.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. That's kind of why I got into it, actually. I was like kind of like a shy kid back in the day, and going on there, I got to be somebody else who had like all the confidence and had stuff going on. I don't know. Not that I didn't have stuff going. You know what I mean?
I can pretend to have it together.
Yes, exactly.
Or play somebody that's even more messed up than I am.
Yeah. Makes you feel better by comparison.
It's always the best.
A lot of times, Stephen.
Yeah.
But trying not to give a lot away from the play. Go see it. But can you talk a little about your characters, both of you?
Want to go first?
No,
okay.
You can go first.
So I play Tron/Jacob. Tron's the D&D character, if you will. I like to see him as a mix between Conan the Barbarian and Goku from Dragon Ball. See, that's pretty accurate. That's why I got that smart.
Sorry, that was great.
He walks the line between brave and dumb.
So well.
Yes.
And doesn't even know it.
Exactly.
How would you say that's considerably different from Jacob?
Well, Jacob's a lot more put together. He's, I don't want to say he has more going on with his life, because, I mean, come on, Tron's got a lot going on, too. But,
he doesn't.
I mean, he's going around fighting some bad guys and stuff for the land of Escapia. Look, that's something. See, how does it differ? That was the question?
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, Jacob's, I'd say he's pretty brave as well, but he doesn't go around bashing a bunch of bad guys or monsters. He's more of like a home person, somebody living there, as opposed to like a murder hobo, if you will. He's got a family to take care of, a husband, a daughter. Yeah, daughter is the word. And he's really got to be there for his family. Although Tron, too, also is there for his family as well, his family of fellow adventurers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dang.
You contrast and compared.
Yeah,
good job, Joey.
Good.
Thanks.
I play Rowan/Hannah. Rowan in the world of Ascapia is classified as a wizard, I would say. we had a little bit of a discussion about that. But I mean, she's got a bunch of
one.
magic items. Went to magic school. Thinks she's got it together, but absolutely has no clue what's going on most of the time. Can't find a thing in her bag to save her life. Trying to figure herself out while also not letting the world end, which, you know, aren't we all? In which I'd say Hannah is much the same, except it's slightly vague, but I think in the character description she's a barista. She's described as a hippie barista. But she's also figuring herself out in different ways, really new to the idea of gaming and all the possibilities it opens up, which I can relate to. I only started playing roleplay games during lockdown, actually, a couple years ago. But alas, they are addictive, and I love to have dice, and I love to do tiny math that breaks my brain. But yeah, they're both similar in the way that they're trying to find themselves and be useful and be a part of something. But that's pretty much where the similarities end, because one of them is magic.
I'm thinking back to when I was a kid. The first one I ever played was called Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, yes.
And the funniest thing was my brother told me, my parents would get me for Christmas, and I think it was not Arkham House. There's a place, it's tons, you might know it, it's tons of role-playing games, board games. You get everything from this place in the old days. But my mom was trying to order it on the phone, and she's not a Lovecraft fan, and she's trying to pronounce Cthulhu. She's called C-T-H. And I just even got it for the booklet just to read about all the characters and everything.
Funny that you should bring up Call of Cthulhu, because as it turns out, our very last DVC show, most recent DVC show from November, All the Devils, was very much influenced by Call of Cthulhu and had a very Lovecraftian influence to it. The style of that play was placed in the 1920s and explored a lot of the themes of this sort of unknown horror and how much of humanity is responsible for that kind of horror. So, as it turns out, we've ultimately ended up, I think we're what do they call this, a motif? I think we've discovered a motif.
Causing our own problems? What do we do?
Well, that's been a DVC
the kind of
motif.
existential scream.
Be careful, though, because you know all of those tragic heroes, you go where you shouldn't go and something really bad happens.
Right. Well, that's the
that was a very good show, by the way. That there was always, we always keep saying which next one we see is, well, that's the best one we saw. Then it's the next one we see.
Well, that's good. That's also pressure. Thank you. I already feel that pressure, but appreciate that.
Exponential growth. That's what we all look for.
You still got me on that Romeo and Juliet where you did the different ending. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a great respect for Shakespeare's work in some ways, but DVC is all about taking traditional aspects of theater or productions and looking at them through the lens of right now. So whether that's an original work that we have, we're exploring through the ideas and sensibilities and concepts of today, but when we do an established work like Titus Andronicus or Romeo and Juliet, at this point you've really got to, I feel like, do something very different with it. You have to hold the mirror up to nature as Hamlet instructs and do the show in a way that has meaning for the world that's watching it right now. So with this piece, I'm sure I'll feel the same way about this piece in 150 years when someone's looking at Canon and going, oh, that's cute. They used to sit around a table and pretend they were in a fantasy world.
Well, what you also do in all your works, I always compare you, this is a compliment from me to Star Trek, because you make people think, but you do it in an entertaining way. Because I always have that idea that you don't want to just go in and preach, yes, it might be right, but you want people to think about these things.
You got to trick them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely, you're going to have fun at this show.
Really. Don't use the air quotes.
We promise. No one can see the air quotes.
Yeah, that's why I had to point them out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this, I guess the idea of role-playing, Alexis talked a little bit about getting immersed in gaming, and Joey also. Well, we all have a background in doing this, but we have a slightly different background because I'm a couple of years older than these other people. And there was an interesting time, perhaps you remember it, when these sorts of things were considered very, nerdy and weird and perhaps Satan-worshipping. And
what was the thing in high school? Was it SimCon? All my friends would go to that. It was like one of those.
It was really, I mean...
something like that. That was a big one for them.
Yeah. The evolution of the role-playing game as an art form through people that create it, but also through the group of people that play it, is considerably different. So, I certainly did not let anyone know that this was... I spent hours and hours playing this game, except for the other people who also kind of played the game. They had like a little secret code because, it was sort of like... considered something only mentally unstable.
No, this was where we
Another way it's very similar to theater.
That's right. That's right.
In the nerd, like in the nerd lexicon, if you were a comic book person, one of the things I've heard people say at the shop like 30 years ago, well, at least you can look down the D&Ders.
Right.
Well, my girlfriend's son used to get together with a bunch of guys, friends, on Mondays and do Dungeons and Dragons stuff. And he bought all those big binder things and all the, he's got tons of that stuff. And I listen to those guys. I know nothing about it.
Right.
So I used to listen to them kind of, and just how excited they all got, and some of how they would actually, they were talking this thing like they were really there.
Yep.
I mean, they weren't pretending anything. It was really interesting.
The amount of screaming and cursing
Yeah.
that really goes into
you killed me! Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Something happens and you're just like, no, God.
Yeah, I heard that a lot. No!
That's when the game
those.
master's doing something right, because that's your hope, is that people will get so immersed. But I mean, by contrast, true story, last year, after I was talking about growing up in this kind of society where people were like, and everything was Dungeons and Dragons, by the way. There's no other game.
Right,
it's like everything falls in the category of Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't matter what you play. Like, what is Call of Cthulhu? It's like Dungeons and Dragons with horror elements.
That is what you have to tell people.
Right. So, I was in this Zoom meeting, and I'm sitting there talking to people. I'm waiting for this. It was with teachers, right? And there's 4 other teachers in here. And so I'm in this room, and there's four middle-aged white women, and they're getting ready, talking about their teaching. One of them's a kindergarten teacher, the other one's in 4th grade. And I go in and sign in the Zoom meeting, and when I get there, they're talking about their D&D characters.
No
And
way.
someone was like, I gotta play, on Tuesdays, I tell my son, you gotta get to soccer by 6, because I'm playing this game. And in one way, I was like super excited by that. I was like, wow. But then I was also like, really? Wait, you can do that? Like, I didn't have to hide, or I ended up cram it into my bag when somebody came walking by. So you certainly see that I think this play at this point maybe certainly we're going to have people in the audience that are very unfamiliar with the concepts of the game. And besides not catching some of the
Heather.
side comments and puns and things, the side jibes at 5E or whatever. For the most part, I think they're still going to be able to understand the concept of the show and be involved in it. That's the hope, of course. But at the same time, society's also moved to this point where people understand the concepts of this, are familiar with this game in a way that would never have been the case a generation ago.
I mean, I remember I'd even play the screen games like Zork and stuff where you typed in the response. And but the one for me, I always remember this, you do get traumatized. 6th grade, they asked what our favorite TV show was, right? So people like Happy Days, and they get to me, I say Star Trek, the room laughed at me. And now imagine though, all the comic book stuff, because I was the comic book kid. Now everybody loves that stuff, though. Right. Isn't it funny?
It's amazing how it has changed. It used to be I can read that kid stuff and grow up, and and now it's oh man, people are spending big money to buy old it's just crazy.
But even that, I was I like the Ramones or other bands, and people will go, oh, that music sucks. Now I'll hear Ramones' music at Wegmans.
Right.
Rob, you were very brave. When things like that happened in grammar school, I just said whatever every other kid said.
Oh, man.
I killed my soul a little bit.
Well, now you get to do this.
Well, then I would go home and watch like
And
Batman.
they're all listening right now.
Yes.
I acted out.
Kyle.
Talking about you, man.
You know, and I would be like going home and watching Batman with Adam West and stuff, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, did you watch the football?" Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I never.
And everything
That
else.
was me.
You know, but you get addicted to it. I just, from playing it, I've really enjoyed it, and I think it stills the idea. If you have a creative mind, you can go so far with it.
Yeah, and you can shape the game into what you want it to be, what your players want it to be. I think that's a big part of it, is saying, like, what kind of game are we playing? There's so many different ways to do this. You're creating the world together. You're telling a story. This is the connection between this and theater, of course.
Right.
The only one.
For thousands of years, you've just been telling a story. And it's the different ways in which stories are told and how society, embraces those at certain points in time and maybe does not at other points in time. So there's definitely, clearly a very theatrical aspect to the game. And people like the sense of, I mean, as a person who's been a game master for many, many years, people like having a sense of control of things. I mean, you like to sit down and go, let me plot out this thing, and, life is very nonsensical in a lot of ways.
So is the title alluding to just, canon, like being the faithful thing, like they talk about in superhero movies?
So correct, it is canon with one N,
Right.
artillery jokes aside. And the idea, actually, maybe Alexis could say the line.
Oh man, do I know the line?
In the scene, in the show, when Alexis is, when Hannah's boyfriend, Noah, played by Vince Delba, asks what canon is, Hannah tells him.
Standards and norms to apply to the history and the gameplay. It's like tradition. Oh man, there's no way on earth.
Yeah. So
I have not looked at my lines today. We only had to be off book 2 days ago.
I think you hit it.
Give a kid some credit.
You hit it. The standards and norms. It's the idea of, the law. Like especially in comics, in fantasy, all the stuff you got. Star Wars, people lose their minds about
Right.
canon, right? Like, is it canon that Luke's, nephew was born on this planet? And then if somebody writes a story where Luke's nephew was not born on that planet, people lose their minds.
That's not canon.
Correct.
All your fan fiction has to have disclaimers like, I know what the canon is and I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's a system of guidelines. So the idea behind it in the show, obviously, hopefully will become very clear as you watch the show. But it does follow that idea of, what are the set of established rules and guidelines we're supposed to be following, that if you do not, people will look at it and, and there'll be could have some pretty serious arguments or differences of opinion on these sorts of matters. And Hannah states in the first act of the play something to the effect of, it's important to the extent that it informs the game, but you don't let it control everything you do.
Or you shouldn't.
Right. And so some people use the canon, I think, in a respectful, appropriate way that displays a history, real or imagined. And then sometimes people get a little bit too.
Right. I've always found that interesting when they try to, we're going to make a different, he's not going to come from this planet. He's going to come from, they'll just go off the page and they want to tell it a different way and reimagine and all
Right.
that stuff. And, okay, sometimes that's cool, but, most people, how many times can you tell the same old story,
Right.
number one? But number two, I don't know, I guess you have to look at it almost like how DC and they used to have those imaginary tales.
Yeah.
I think if you frame it like, okay, this could have happened this way, but it didn't, but what if it did? And then you can make up a new story because you framed it a different way.
Right.
But
Like I said, fan fiction.
right.
And I think in imaginary universes, you still want to have some rules so everything doesn't
Of course,
go.
yeah.
That's the thing. But I had a freak out the one time. One of my friends is a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm sort of a dabbler. I mentioned Mara Jade was in Return of the Jedi. I said, she wasn't in it. She was in it. Clearly, it's stated in this book she was hiding as a guard. Look it up. But I mean, go look at like James Bond. They're the same movie essentially, but the guy was, fighting in the Cold War. They had him bring him up to,
Right.
and and they don't say. I always say it's a code name, maybe because it's a different. How was this guy fighting like in the '60s, and now he's just started now?
Yeah.
You have to update. That's what stuff is. I mean, if you look at Stan Lee did the thing about this, and one day we will have you for a big comic book thing.
Oh.
Yes, we will. But you can come to Alexis.
I've read one comic
Crossword
series
puzzle.
in my entire
Crossword
life.
puzzle, man.
Will Alex Max and Joey Cha-Cha be present as
Yes.
well?
But Stanley
I.
said, look at comic books, how they've changed over the years. You might not even think it, but if you read, go from Fantastic Four 1 to 100 and go on, they change with the times and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, yeah, you have to, or else it becomes anachronistic or whatever. You just can't. It doesn't. You can't have the same patriotic themes you had in World War II times and all that kind of stuff because now it's not cool.
They do. The eras do change. Like if you read, obviously, anything goes on for many decades, like comic books, you will see the societal shift. You'll see it be ahead of the curve of the societal shift, which will then aid in the societal shift, but you also see it react to the societal shift. And so that's the case. And I mean, with all the comic books, they were in real time. They said, it's 1966 now. And then, 2 years later, they'd be saying, 2 years ago, I fought this villain. And then somewhere along the line, they found out, wait a minute, these characters are all going to be 100 years old really soon. And we don't want that. And all of a sudden, all that time stuff kind of just got a lot more nebulous.
I figured it out one time where, Peter
it's-
Parker would have been 63.
Yeah,
There's
right.
an issue with Daredevil where he's going, I've gone through all this stuff and I'm only 28. It's 15 years.
I mean,
Yeah.
in the 60s, I was never really crazy about the comic stories where they had to put rock bands in and the Beatles type stuff.
I mean,
and
Kiss fought a lot of villains.
everything was trying to be a teenage thing, and it just. I mean, when you're a teenager, they're relating to me. But now you read it and you go, man, what were they thinking?
Yeah. So I think you'll see that this show is very, very much keeping in the themes in line with just what our mission is and with DVC, but also a little bit different.
It sounds intriguing. It really does.
Sounds good.
If you can't, don't give it away if you don't want to spoil it. Is there a big bad in the fantasy world? Or,
Well, they are.
Or just is it contemporary issue big bads?
Very early on in the show, you find out that they have to defeat a Death Lord, but not just a Death Lord.
An alien lich Death Lord.
Ooh.
So that's pretty intense. And this group of adventurers, along with other many DVC people you've seen in quite a few DVC shows, like MJ Savastano, who also co-directed the show, and Adriana Allen, and who's our fifth party member?
Oh my God.
Caleb.
Oh, Caleb Wiggins.
Wait, no, there's someone else.
Other Caleb.
Oh, there's two Calebs. Yep,
Yes,
that's right.
we do.
I was
Caleb
thinking
Wiggins.
of the other one.
Caleb Chittapong plays our game master, Matthew. And there are several characters that they interact with, actors that portray characters they interact with on the Earth world. We're also working with some new people. Well, one recent high school graduate from 2 days ago. Anna Kedavong is taking on her first acting role in a show. And we're also working with Lori Love Restivo for the first time in many, many times. She's come to quite a few DVC shows. And I can't say too much about it, but she might be playing a goddess. So
I love all the surprises in this one too. Where you're giving enough that it's intriguing to see, but I don't. But I was going to. The one question
maybe.
I don't think I've ever asked about: what are the dynamics between you and your sister, directing these? And you have you sort of play. Okay, you do this, you do this, you just cross
directing
over.
with the sibling. So if you read our article in what was that, City Magazine?
Yes, I did. I have copies of it.
Oh, that's great. Of course. Well, you said you saved old copies of City Magazine,
Well,
so
I
I
saved
hope
more of this one.
hope that included ours. Working with the sibling is interesting because we have very different styles, but I think what works first of all is that we've known each other for the vast majority of our lives, and you can have a disagreement or try to resolve something in a positive conflict kind of way. That's just, if you have this kind of argument with someone else, then maybe you don't talk to that person for a while, you got some resentment build up. I don't know. Humans do that. But, we're so past that. I mean, when you go through this, the extent of life to where you're going to have some big argument about the way something happens in a scene, and then it's gone. We work for the idea of what's the best, most effective way to do what we're trying to do. MJ has all of the actual theatrical official training, as in, schooling and being in a variety of shows for a variety of different mediums and different companies. And I'd like to think that we just look at, okay, what do each of us do best, and we let that person do what they do best. But it also just helps to have somebody to constantly kick ideas around. I mean, DVC as a whole is intended to be a very collaborative, and I hope everyone involved feels like it is collaborative. We sit down and say, this is what we want to do. How are we going to do it? And, hopefully people feel personally invested, and that makes them feel like what they're doing is worthwhile. And I guess MJ and I just kind of sit down and go, okay, what are we going to do? There's certainly some plays where, for House of Hands, for example, MJ's knowledge of the subject material meant that they were going to kind of take a little bit of a lead on that. And then for something like All the Devils, when I put the script together, I went, okay. And also, MJ was on stage for almost every minute of that show, so it made it a little hard to do all of the in-the-moment directing duties. But I think we strike a good balance, just listening to each other, ignoring each other.
I was reading Mel Brooks' book. He said the only argument he ever had with Gene Wilder was over a scene in Young Frankenstein. I think it was the putting on the Ritz scene, and what they really got yelling at each other. So what Mel Brooks said was, okay, we'll film the scene, you watch it, if you don't like it, we won't put it in. And Gene Wilder saw it and goes, no, you were right. And I think you have to, sometimes, if you can collaborate, we know this from bands.
Oh, yeah.
That if you're willing to go, okay, beat me on the idea, this idea is better, and you have enough, you can admit that.
That's a great example.
Yeah. It's not like podcasts where you worry about, your co-host, like, hey, you want to try this coffee? Sip it first.
I usually preface any idea I have at rehearsals with, hey, I'm hearing this, can we just try it?
Yep.
And see if you like it.
I always say you have to know how to work together.
If it doesn't drive anybody nuts, it just stays.
You have to know how to work together, because that's why I look at some great artists like Jeff Beck. He's great, but he could have been better. But you have to have enough confidence, but not arrogance, to go, hey, your idea's better. Bounce this off. It might be good.
That's the wisdom of Rob. Jeff Beck could have been better.
Well, musically, his music, he's as a guitar player, he's great. But think about his music in general, how much better it could have been if he worked with other musicians.
Right, it is true. But working with people is difficult. And like I said, we just have a nice, effective system. There's certainly debates. But we've also, I think, gotten to the point where when we're watching a scene, even when we're working on directing a scene together, I kind of know what direction MJ's going to go in with responses, and I think MJ knows that about me too. And I definitely appreciate, I can often look at something and go, this isn't working, and I want it to be here, but I don't know how to do that. And MJ knows how to do that, knows how to just say, let's figure out how to shift this objective, or why don't you try moving on this line instead? Yeah. And that stuff is like putting pieces of a puzzle together.
Blocking and all that kind of stuff.
Somebody's always got to be thinking big picture, and somebody's got to be thinking super detail.
Right.
Or else you just miss out on a lot of things. So, I don't know. We've officially Sav-Sibbed directed, I think, 5 or 6 shows, but it's really been going on a while before we came up with the official name.
I love the name. It's catchy, though.
I'm sure it's been happening the entire time that Joey and Alexis have been involved in DVC.
For sure.
And I will say, this has been really great, and I think that you've given people a taste, but I'm still confused at what it is, which is great because I have to go see it.
And that will change once you see it, yes. I'm sure.
No,
you
not
won't
really.
Be confused
afterwards. Is a bad
Don't
word,
worry.
but I'm intrigued because I don't know the whole.
Right.
I'm getting to the point now with media that, something comes up. Oh, here's the ending. Here's the, now I know enough. I want to see it, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's not any one moment of spectacular spoiler, oh, I don't need to see the show now because I know that Bruce Willis is already dead or whatever.
I knew that from the beginning. I don't know how people didn't see that.
But that's the character in The Sixth Sense, by the way. I know it's a spoiler, but also
right.
Bruce Willis is not dead. So
right.
That's what happens in that movie.
Anyway, so
okay, did anybody see Lady in the Water? Because this sort of reminded me of Lady in the Water.
I feel like I saw it forever ago, but I don't remember.
That's the movie where
well.
they're all D&D characters. They're in an apartment complex and they're fighting some evil, and it turns out they're all role playing.
No way! Is that the twist in that movie? How do I not remember
that? Is that the twist in that movie?
Yes.
Oh.
Jesus.
Wait, you're trying to pretend you don't know the end of Sixth Sense, but you saw Lady in the Water?
I didn't Sixth Sense. It was a joke. It was a bit.
Not to be confused with Lady in the Lake.
That's upcoming.
No, Lady in the Lake's like a film noir movie
It is,
or
yeah.
something. But cool. And the other thing I will have to say, go see this and tell us the dates again so I don't mess it up.
Yeah, we open Friday, July 12th. We run through the 20th. We have one matinee, 2 p.m. show on Sunday the 14th. All the rest of the shows are 7:30. 2 weekends. It's a Friday through Sunday and then a Thursday through Saturday.
And tickets are very easy to get because I always say this: if I can navigate a website, everybody can navigate a website. Let's go to MUCC.
And that's the only reason tickets are very easy to get, because let me tell you, they're in high demand.
They are always in high demand. They are, but I'll tell you this thing. This is from the heart. How many years I've been saying, MJ's work, your work. You go out anywhere, you pay top dollar. This is a bargain seeing these great performances. Really.
It is part of our mission statement that our theater will be socially conscious and affordable and relevant to
and
our
you can
community.
grandfather clause me if you raise the prices, because I said
Well, we didn't raise the price as much as every other price has gone up in the past year and a half. So
you get to see great shows. It's fun. You support local arts. Maybe you learn something, too.
we also have any student, if you're any student of anything at any level, we have an extremely reasonable online or at-the-door price.
I'm a student of life.
That being as a result of DVC coming out of
I'm just remembering
Wilson,
the time
right.
my dad tried to get senior discounts at a golf course.
Yeah.
And I'm like 20. And you don't look like a senior.
Yeah, our theater audience is, I would say, on average, significantly younger than many
Most.
theater audiences you will see.
Yeah. But come on down. There's great parking, too. But
That's great parking.
the only thing I can add is, Alexis, how the crossword puzzle's doing. How you
I
doing?
put it down for the podcast because I wanted to give you my full attention.
Oh, you're the best. You're the best.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Cool. But thanks for being on. It's always fun having you down here, and I'll see you in a couple
This was
weeks.
cool. That's very
And
interesting.
I have because nobody's going to sing. Anybody want to sing?
No.
You got
No, not you. You're a
Oh,
drummer.
all right.
So,
Joey?
no.
Mario, you offered just now?
So, what we always do, we play something. And
Yes.
coming up this week, a good friend Adriana Noon's playing at Abilene on Friday, but on the 3rd, Infrared Radiation Orchestra is playing at Record Archive. And I have a disc from them, from Kim. It's the Mad Dog Sullivan disc, and you're the director. You want to pick a song?
I just heard their drummer quit. So I wonder if the drummer's still playing this show.
And that drummer was my friend, so I'm not going to introduce this.
Alexis, you want to pick that?
I like I Fought the Law.
Okay. Well, do I Fought the Law? I think it goes with your play, too, in a way.
I mean, yeah.
Sort of.
They
I'm
can
trying
all
to
go
draw
with
it all together.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate coming full circle on the podcast.
I was looking
That's
for.
right.
Fight
I was
the law,
looking
change
for
the
the
canon.
canon. We changed the canon.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
Well, I was looking all over for
see
something.
what
I'm
you
like,
did
wait,
there.
I haven't played Kim's thing yet. We have a lot of musicians. We have to play their work.
Sure.
We have theater. We can play somebody's music. Hallelujah. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Yeah, thank
Best
you.
of
Thank
luck
you.
on this.
Go see this
Thanks.
thing. It sounds
Yeah.
really good.